We're sitting down here today with new up and coming United 32 County Socialist Republic rapper, the Irish Drake, Bardal.
Yeah, that's right. I had to go by Drake for the Anglos. A lot of people can't speak Irish.
Yeah.
And I tried to make it clear for everybody. I mean, how many times I shout out the six, like eyes on the prize. We had, six always in my heart, on my mind, in my rhymes.
Now by six, you mean the occupied counties.
Yeah, the north.
Okay,
I was always talking about. We up north.
Do go on.
Yeah, I just have a few bars to share today.
Is this an exclusive?
This is exclusive.
Oh shit!
All right, give me a beat. Yeah. Deep inside my bag, that's why my bar's so spicy. Text your girl 26 and 6 equals she's the one for me. Got so much money, it's like I'm married to Marla. Got the whole crew yelling, Chucky Arla. Gonna run the rap game, that's what the crystal ball says. Only gotta be lucky once, you gotta be always. Yeah. That's all I got.
It's pretty good. Dropping the character now. You mispronounced Chucky Arla, but yeah.
That was Bardal, just kicking it here, and I don't know where he'd fucking hang out. Where does Drake even hang out? Like Drake is the thing that I love so much about Drake is that he's just like, and I know that you've mentioned this before. And we got like that one nasty comment on YouTube where you were like, Drake is like Joe Rogan. That then Drake is just kind of like this mirror that then whatever's around him can always just kind of like be reflected on. And like now he is trying to be a drill rapper, and I think this is just perfect. He's like, doing that London Ting, Drake.
You like the Spice Bag reference? I thought of that.
I really like that. Okay, I'll lead us in. Hey. Welcome to your weekly Corner Späti. We got the boys here. Yulia is in Paris, in the revolution.
Yes.
The meme finally came true. Like, Yulia is on the front lines.
Her yellow vest came in the mail. So
yeah,
she was ready.
You've been called to iron.
Yeah, she was like how the U.S. kind of did the draft occasionally. It was that for her, but she was stoked.
If you tweet well enough, you will get yours in the post. You will be invited to join the fight.
Yeah. So while Yulia is bravely serving, us and the values that we stand for, you're stuck with the three of us of myself, Nick, Rob.
Here to talk about Irish Ting.
and Ciarán.
I'm gonna regret doing this episode.
Yeah, and this is a Ciarán episode. This is all about Ireland elections. Those are a thing, and Ireland does them very weird.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I think there was a good hour of. First of all right, I'm a wonderful host. We are currently at Ciarán's Anime Dog Palace, and I made everyone spice bags.
They were delicious.
Homemade spice bags. And while that took forever, it also equally took forever to explain the Irish voting system.
Which you were doing simultaneously with cooking, so it
delayed both of them, I think. But yeah.
The one thing to remember is that as a country, once you have a good, forget about this first past the post nonsense. Once you have a good electoral system, you're done. Politics, You won. You beat the game.
Yep.
Politics is perfect.
Switzerland is the ultimate proof of that. Yeah. And all their fucking misogynistic Nazi gold. All right. It's a great system.
The gold's misogynistic or the parties?
It's the only way that it explains the misogyny in Switzerland is the Nazi gold, like water runoff got into the water supply and then they're now they're sexist.
Oh, okay.
Before that they were fine. Oh, yeah. So where do we start with this?
All right. So I propose I think people are generally aware of the Irish elections. Mm-hmm. I think the only overview we need to give is that the two main centrist parties that have always dominated the election, in recent years, have dipped below 50%. Sinn Féin got the highest percentage by a sliver. And it's a big seismic shift in Ireland politics. Or is it?
First takeaway from this, I would say yes. this is a seismic shift in Irish politics. It is a good one. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, how to summarise these? Ireland doesn't really have a left and a right in the traditional sense. We have these two parties who are shit and terrible. You can kind of look at them in a kind of post-colonial framework of one is more a friend to like the British occupiers than the other. Like Fianna Fáil's tagline is still the Republican Party, even though they're not the party that agitates most for that. And Fine Gael's old nickname is the Commonwealth Party. And that's kind of the lines they are drawn, and that's like based on the Civil War, but that's kind of like mostly aesthetic now. Big old sins of the past. Fianna Fáil has mostly ruled us since independence in one shape or another. They brought neoliberalism to Ireland in the form of former Taoiseach Charlie Haughey.
That's not his name.
It is his name. It's a great name, and there's like multiple H's in it. It's wonderful. Anyway, don't get me started on this.
Fucking Charlie Hee Haw. What was his name?
Haughey. Not hee-haw, Haughey.
It seems like you can use the classic quote from Julius Nyerere, the first leader of post-colonial Tanzania, who said about the U.S., the U.S. is also a one-party state, but with typical American extravagance, they have two of them.
Yes, that is exactly the perfect quote. The big sins of the past, and Fianna Fáil is also kind of like viewed as responsible for like 2008 within Ireland and the economic mismanagement. Fine Gael is supposedly to their right. The lines blur quite a bit, but if like they are the ones who lean more fascist, the people who like leave their party attempt to make like Ireland's right wing party. Like I was talking before we started recording about Renua, which was a failure, but it still was attempted.
Well, that's recent history, but also in like not ancient old history, like they were the blue shirts helped form Fine Gael.
They were associated with things like the March on Dublin, which was trying to do the March on Rome. That like big boy Berlusconi, not Berlusconi, Jesus. Fuck, my brain's gone.
Keep rolling.
Mussolini.
Mussolini,
Keep
yeah.
going.
Italian Hitler.
All I have to say about that is that say what you will about the fascists, but you know if you're a brown shirt, if you have shit reactionary policies, just change your color to turquoise. No one will notice.
No one will notice. Yeah,
it's worked every time.
Brown shirts in other countries, but Ireland had some flair. They were blue shirts, which is a nice common color when you're signing up to fight alongside Franco's regime.
And the Greens will support you.
Yeah. Oh God. So yeah, the people would say that those parties both suffered heavily because of 2008. I saw someone kind of like map it though over like the entire history of Ireland, and they've been continuously going down in popular vote, just like from Ireland's very first election all the way to like contemporary. It's been like a downward trend of like combined vote for the two of them. But they are effectively the same. There was like one little tidbit I love to roll out, which was in 1999, a bunch of like European political scientists basically did a study on like what is the difference between these two parties. They interviewed like 1,000+ members of Fine Gael, fee-paying members. This is when they were in opposition, and 39% of them said there is no difference between them and Fianna Fáil.
I thought they like put both of the parties in front of them and said, "Okay, now drink one. Which one do you think that is?" And no one could tell the difference.
I know Fine Gael when I drink it. I'm a Fine Gael.
Serve me that Fine Gael shit.
New Fianna Fáil.
I will know.
Damn, this Fine Gael? Crazy.
Okay, so just to zoom out a little bit, so they were always basically the same? I mean, I know it goes back to the Irish Civil War, but it seems like since the 80s, 90s, that it's really been like, there's no difference. I mean, part of this whole Celtic Tiger, and I'm mispronouncing everything. I'm mispronouncing
Celtic
everything
Tiger.
today.
It's not just because you like the basketball team, there's the Celtics.
Oh, that is why I said that.
Yeah.
Fun fact, when I was a kid, because it was always talked about on the radio, I thought the Celtic Tiger was an actual animal. And it was in Northern Ireland, because that's the part of Ireland I hadn't been to yet. and it was obviously white with green stripes because animals know what country they're in. Fucking hell. Have they always been the same? Yeah, ish. Basically, like the only issue that caused them to split was the Anglo-Irish Treaty, which was we passed that initially, and that's where the partition of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland basically came from. And Fianna Fáil came from the part of Sinn Féin that rejected that, and Fine Gael came from the part of Sinn Féin that didn't. And that's where the split happens. It was like someone did do a tweet of like having to explain the history of Irish politics, of like having to explain to people how Fine Gael, which came from the IRA, was very similar to Fianna Fáil, who also came from the IRA, and both of those people don't want to be involved with Sinn Féin because of their involvement with the IRA. Like it's like that is the shortest way to describe Irish politics, but it's horribly confusing.
So, how would you contrast, if at all, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil's policies and just politics in general before the 2008 crash, so like in the quote-unquote boom years, and then after the 2008 crash?
Jesus.
How did we get here?
Yeah.
Is the question.
So there's basically, why there is no difference? There is a difference in how they campaign. Fianna Fáil will campaign as being more socially to the left. I mean, how they campaign, you could probably compare it to like the British Lib Dems. So they would talk about they do talk about spending programs. One of the things they kept rolling out this election is like, we built all the social housing in Ireland, but just, haven't done so since the 70s. But yeah, they did do that, and they have been in favor of these spending and redistributive policies in the past. Whereas Fine Gael has always campaigned on we need to tighten our belts and pull up our bootstraps. We're in hard times now. It's because of those fuckers. But both of them just end up doing austerity.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not that different than the Democrats and Republicans in the U.S., right? Yeah. It's that's the perfect system for them. All right, now this is when an election happens, everyone's this is, and a lot of harsh words are spilled, and then as soon as it's over, they're well, we're all on the same side.
Yeah. I think the other thing, though, what the Americans have managed to do is the culture war stuff, or the social policy stuff. There is no divide on, say, same-sex marriage between these two parties. They both tacitly support it, basically. Leo Varadkar is gay, and he's the leader of Fine Gael, the furthest right viable party in Ireland, quote unquote. So yeah, they've. That's kind of the problem. I think that's why the mirage still goes in the United States. The parties are different because they have those social policy differences that they can kind of say, oh no, look, we're different. Look at Pete Buttigieg. He's gay. Where's the gay Republican? And then they'll point to one and they'll ignore it or something. But still, Ireland has both those parties have clearly come out in favor of supposedly controversial issues like abortion, divorce, gay marriage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So to hone in on this election, why did they do so poorly? What happened?
So the usual pattern in Irish elections is you vote for the one who isn't in power, kind of thing. So everyone was okay. So yeah, that's basically it. So in 2008, Fianna Fáil was in charge. They were booted out and replaced with Fine Gael because Fine Gael wasn't in charge during 2008, even though their playbook probably would have been the exact same. But what happened in the 2016 election was no one got an outright majority, and the only feasible thing in the Irish Parliament at all was Fine Gael was back in government with a smattering of independents to prop them up and a confidence in supply deal from Fianna Fáil. And Fianna Fáil was pretty certain that the Irish population will think we're in opposition. And that didn't work.
But it works every election cycle. We just keep telling them. So it's basically a GroKo-ish situation for Ireland.
Yeah. But because it was confidence supply, there was no Fianna Fáil ministers or anything like that. There was no one in the top power or whatever. But they literally tried campaigning on that. The first leaders debate in this election, which was only between Micheál Martin and Leo Varadkar, the two leaders of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, was like Fianna Fáil kept saying we were in opposition. We didn't do any of this. It was like, but the moderator or various other people on the street were like, no, you signed off on all this shit.
Do we have any examples of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael policies? Any amusing anecdotes we want to share?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Where's one? I think my co-host from previously in Europe, Hugh, would probably... You can watch a blood vessel pop in his neck if you ever talk about the Bertie Bowl, which was this massive stadium that former Fianna Fáil Taoiseach Bertie Ahern like just shoveled a ton of money into and was never built. A lot of like dodgy deals with contractors is a usual common thing. Policy positions, it's just like maintaining things. Some scandals of like silencing journalists when they find out that like a bunch of Irish cops had been caught by other Irish cops drink driving, and that doesn't get added to their record. I think one of the big ones now is they're building a massive hospital in Ireland at the moment, which is sorely needed. But several scandals have happened of, for example, most hospitals in Ireland are basically owned by a cloister of nuns. And with this new hospital, they're going to give the management to a cloister of nuns.
Fucking big nun, always messing up our politics.
But like this was
shadowy
like,
cabal.
This was after the very
literally their clothes are kind of dark.
But this was after like the repeal of the eighth movement of just like most of the horrible Catholic theocracy shit has like kind of been done away with, but then there's still like the history of the Magdalene laundries of just giant mass graves of like babies being found, and that was all the work of like various cloisters of nuns, and people were not happy about that. And
Wait, what?
yeah, so a lot of women who got pregnant out of wedlock in Ireland would go to like a monastery, and the nuns would just basically beat the shit out of them to the point in which the baby probably wouldn't come out like successfully, like there would be a miscarriage. And I think it was like in Tuam in County Meath where they discovered like on the grounds of a church a relatively recent like just mass grave of babies. There's a reason why we hate the Catholic Church in Ireland.
Well, I mean, I get that, but like, aren't that's really like that's a real Catholic way of getting around the no abortion thing.
Yeah.
Like,
but yeah, no, like shit like that. And then this hospital again that's being handed over to the nuns is at this point like, God, just like billions over budget at this point, to the point of like no like third party contractor who comes in and looks at the plans is like, this shouldn't cost this much at all. Where the fuck is this money going? Ireland is real horny for public private partnerships. And that is where like both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are massively in favour of. That's how you do shit in Ireland. Of take public money, give it to the private sector. Where did all the money go? I guess we have to do austerity again.
I am always in favor of nations and parties and just groups of cool people who never seem to learn their lesson.
Does this have anything to do with Apple?
Yeah, both parties. So if anyone doesn't know, there's the whole thing where the EU ruled that Apple owes us like, God, 14 billion or something like that in taxes. And both Fine Gael was in charge of the government for this thing happening, but both parties have basically said they wouldn't take the money, and both parties want to preserve Ireland's like tax haven status. I think a lot of people who are idiots online will point to our like 13.5% corporate tax rate as being the problem, which it isn't. The problem is that like the big giant companies that we have in Ireland don't even pay that. Our like Apple was found to be paying like 0.001% effective tax rate. I think we paid Starbucks rather than them paying us. Shit like that. Yeah. So classic shit. And then it also makes the left wing, that became a big story, and that I think made the left wing more viable in Ireland because that's the ultimate rebuttal to any kind of like, where will the money come from question of just like, well, if anyone remembers the story from a couple of months ago. Yeah.
Yeah, we all have short memories. Okay, before we move on, I want to know, what is the pothole app? Can we talk about the pothole app?
Pothole app. This I think was like the first thing I put in the notes because it was just the ultimate like chef's kiss of like Fianna Fáil as a party of neoliberal managers. This was in their fucking manifesto. This was like worthy of spilling ink over. Of one of the things they were going to suggest was an app that would again probably be like a public-private partnership of just like we paid Apple again to make this for us, of an app that would just report where a pothole is.
I have an app. It's called Venmo, but the only person you can Venmo is Apple. Just like
nice.
2 cents. Like keep up the good work. Whoever's in charge now.
The only person
I want to say Tim Pool, who's the CEO of Apple.
Tim Cook.
Tim Cook. Yeah.
The only person
Keep cooking.
Tim Pool is that really tragic journey.
Tim Apple.
That they should change their name to Apple. That would make it easier.
Yeah. Just whoever becomes the head of Apple, just
It's
their
a
last
title,
name
basically.
is Tim Apple.
Duke of Apple. That's the real Irish monarch.
Wait, so it was
continue.
just an app just to point out where a pothole was.
Yeah.
It did nothing else. It wasn't.
It didn't exist yet, right?
It doesn't exist.
No, 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 that's
was in
good
the-
that it doesn't
was in the
exist.
manifesto.
Okay,
Cool.
real quick. So it's in this year's manifesto?
Yes.
Okay.
For Fianna Fáil.
So what they're referencing is an app that was made by the city of Boston or somebody in Boston that was made back in like 2010 to identify potholes.
Yeah.
And okay, if my timeline's correct, they developed it in 2010 and it didn't work. It just doesn't work. I mean, Boston like has a ton of problems. If you know anything about the Big Dig, they tried to put the whole highway underneath the city. It kind of worked, but it was ridiculously expensive. Traffic is terrible. Yeah, there's potholes in all the streets. So they're like, let's make an app that will identify where the pothole is. And then it didn't work. And like 2 or 3 years later,
But they just identify where it is. Like there's
Exactly.
no one
You
like
can't- it's not like a 3D printer where you can print a pothole sized plug.
It's literally the top mines bit from the end of the Indiana Jones movie. I'm just like, top mines are on it, but we're just top mines.
yeah, but I mean, so you're telling me that then that they would actually like allocate money for an app instead of them just fixing the fucking potholes.
So it didn't work. And in 2013 or 2014, they're like, I know the answer.
Another pothole app.
We have to crowdsource
The pothole app.
And there was literally, they bragged about this, that there was like tens of thousands of the top minds on this making the app. I remember because I had friends going to school, engineering students in Boston,
That's so
whose
cool.
fucking senior thesis was working on the pothole app. And it was like, you get $25,000 from like Goldman Sachs or whatever, like Liberty Mutual or whoever's fucking offering the prize money.
That's so
And
cool.
then-
That's literally like that couple that like asked people to give them money so they could travel the world. Like they had money themselves, but they're like, we're influencers. We don't need to fucking do this.
Yeah,
That's
right?
so cool.
I gotta be honest.
Tim's.
So as far as I understand, they made a new app. They didn't like, no one was like, it's my app, you're welcome, Boston. They just took the best suggestions, and there's a new app that also sucks. The data that I saw, I think this is from a few years ago from NPR or something, was that of 19,000 potholes reported in the city of Boston, 3,000 were through the app. So that's still the vast majority, someone being like, yeah, there's a pothole. Like, yeah, the city workers going around like writing it down.
I like the idea of crowdsourcing it because like that's literally okay. Peek behind the curtain of Ciarán's life, but that's like literally an example given on like statistical significance of like you only need one person to identify there's a pothole in the road. You don't need to wait for a statistically significant number of people to like point that the road is broken. You can just look yourself, the road is broken. But then there's like, we need to crowdsource this. It's like, 3 people are reporting there's a pothole here. It's like, you know the rule, David. If it isn't 25, it's just garbage data. Like,
What it represents for me is its real peak Obama era mindset, especially in Boston, where it's like,
If you like your pothole, you can keep it.
the data will solve everything. Like they were fucking making movies about being a cool data person and be like, you know, Brad Pitt does data to run a baseball team.
Yeah, I was literally just gonna fucking think that's fucking Moneyball shit. It's like, yeah, you know, you can, you know.
yeah. But this is the thing about this is while I feel like the people in the States, like the Obama clique, kind of like believed in that, I don't think Fianna Fáil does. They just think this is what we can do to get young people, an app about potholes.
Yeah. I don't know if Obama believed it either. I think he's just more.
I think he was surrounded by people who did, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. The pothole app was just perfect. I loved it to bits.
We've freed ourselves from the tyranny of data First, we destroyed the New York Times election needle. Now the pothole app. We will not cast our own powers onto some, data or onto some other idea of some agent in history. It is only our collective action.
Nice.
Anything else about the two?
Our
Our large twin sons running this country.
So, like, one of their ways of
both dressed up in pinstripe suits with large hats, doing maybe a routine where they trip over each other. You still have to applaud and give them money at the end.
I think the one of the ways I've heard summarizing the base of like Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael is Fine Gael is a party of landlords and Fianna Fáil is a party of rich farmers, and also just like. This election was really fucking dire from them, which is great. But like the best place that Fine Gael did was Mayo. And I was like, oh, why did they do so well in Mayo? I looked into it. The guy they ran was like a former like Ireland All-Star like hurling player. That fucking ridiculous sport I showed you that one time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Like he was just a former athlete. They run a celebrity and everyone was like, yes, yep, we're voting for him. The rest of them did terribly. Both leaders of the parties did really bad in their own seats. They weren't in the first count. They didn't come first in both their constituencies. In both their constituencies, they were beaten by a Sinn Féin candidate. The video I think I showed you, Nick, when you were out texting for Bernie. Text for Bernie.
Yeah.
Was Leo Varadkar arriving at his constituency, because the savvy thing you do is you arrive as a politician just before the count that you think you're going to get in on.
It's like when you get paid money to show up to the club for 1 hour.
Yes, exactly that. You show up, you say you were there, you do a little bit of press, you get the like photo op of you going, yeah, we did it. Leo Varadkar comes in thinking he's going to get in on the third count, and he doesn't. And there's this video footage of his face dropping. It's wonderful. And then all you hear throughout the rest of the night is people just being like, it looks like he's not going to get in the fucking fourth count either. Each count takes fucking hours.
It's like a Cornish Späti recording session.
Yeah. Aha. A pain that only we get.
No, only me.
Fair enough.
Okay,
yeah.
So what's the best way to proceed, Ciarán? Should we talk about Sinn Féin, who is #Bay for the whole left around the world, or should we talk about the housing crisis that precipitated this political moment?
Yeah.
What's our tactical inroad?
I think we'll talk about health and housing because that's like the two big issues. I'll do health very quickly because that's easy to summarize. Ireland doesn't have universal healthcare.
Just drink more water. Walk it off.
Walk it off, pretty much. We are nowhere near as bad as the States. Don't get it wrong, because it's basically like... So, like, in the States, you're all basically being conned. Like, there's this tiny pill, and it's like, yeah, that's worth €20,000, whatever. So, like, Ireland is being conned, but we still exist in, like, a European market. So we're getting the European prices of the pill, of the, like, medicine, the pills, the equipment, or whatever. It's just the government isn't footing the bill. So the prices end up being lower than the States, but still shitty. And no matter what price you put on something, it's going to exclude someone. An example that I always remember off the top of the head, to go even see a doctor for a checkup is €70. That's if he doesn't prescribe you anything or anything like that. Yeah, there's private insurances, blah, blah, blah. It's not good. We tried to build a NHS equivalent in 2006, I think, is when we got that started. Some people at home might know where this story is going.
Did they make an app and crowdsource it or whatever?
No. The plan was to basically start from the poorest people and like go tax bracket up, and up. So there is the HSE, and that does exist for Ireland's very poorest, but it's a shockingly underfunded system. A lot of stories of people being like left out in trolleys for ages, women's like ovary cysts diagnosis being like offshored or like thrown away to a third-party company, and then them being like, "Yeah, you're fine," and then turns out a couple of years later they're not, and now they're dying.
That's what happens in a socialist country like Ireland. There's long waiting times.
You know, I didn't fight for this country so that we could have a socialist medical system.
My grandfather didn't fight for Franco so that we would be told what to do by doctors.
I just love that. That's just one of the stereotypical answers that I get back always whenever I message a Trump supporter with the texting thing is literally that of like, read your history. I didn't fight for this country so we could become socialist. And I'm like, you should have. Like, that'd have been cool. I'm obviously a good boy and I write nothing back.
I write, all of your friends in the war died in vain. I'm sorry.
I do like
Rob does not do that. Rob writes nothing. He's a good boy.
I do like the idea of like a Fine Gael voter in Ireland that's still just in the like Spanish Civil War mindset of just like someone on Irish television being like, we should have our own Irish NHS, and him just being like there like, do I detect a Catalonian accent? Love, get my gun. Yeah, so that's the health situation.
Yeah, and the two main parties don't. What is their plan? Rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, pretty much. They both basically say that making anything comparable to what any other European country has is too expensive.
Well, it just doesn't work for a giant, diverse country like Ireland.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, in Norway, I see you got everything you could want. But
Ireland has, count 'em, 2 native ethnicities. It's garbage. Complete lie. Basically, every other party that's like nominally left wing is talking about like an Irish NHS. Then the next one and the big one is housing. Homelessness population in Ireland is ridiculous. I think the homeless population of Dublin is higher than Berlin. Even though Berlin has basically the population of all of Ireland.
Wow.
Yeah, or comparable to it anyway. What have we got? There's like basically no social housing. All social housing was built in the 70s and nothing has been built since. All housing that's built by the private sector is for high income earners. There is basically no way to get into the property market. That is why me and my wife are in this country and why everyone I know is no longer in Ireland.
So see, some good comes out of the political situation. Why you want to change it? How are we going to make more Irish friends?
The average rent in the country nationwide is like €1,700 for a 1-bedroom per month. Dublin rent, which is where you have to be if you want a job, is $2,100 per month for a single bedroom. There's lots of ads regularly coming up of people like renting out couches for €400 a month in like the corner of their apartment. The whole situation.
What was the one with the bathroom? That was just there's a bed in a bathroom.
Yeah, that was like 1,500.
Oh wow,
you
nice.
couldn't even open the bathroom door because the bed was in the way.
Yeah.
No, absolute shit show. And this affects everyone, so it's awful. No one can get onto the property market anymore because Ireland, unlike Germany, and like Germany is very unique in this sense, you are expected to buy a house at some point. But no one can get onto it because no one has the because rent is so high, no one has the means to save up for a sufficient deposit, and housing is completely overvalued as it is. Fine Gael had a hilarious plan, which for their like buying scheme, which one, they weren't going to pay for any of the land, only the cost of the actual house. But anyone who knows that land is the most expensive part of buying a house. And one of the examples they gave was like a single mother who yeah, you remember this, like a single mother, and they were like going through all these things of like her rent is €400 a month that exists nowhere in the country. She makes like what, 55,000 a month is like, that's like 10% of the population is on that. No, like 55,000 a year. And then gets to that last line, and she has a small plot of land. I'm like, what the fuck is this person? The examples Fine Gael gave for their like housing scheme, basically like no one they gave was below the average wage. Average wage in Ireland is like €30,000 a year, and like 63% of the country is on less than that. So yeah.
And so what do you give? Is
Wait,
it
so
just cynical, or are they like, well, those other people don't exist? They shouldn't.
Yeah.
How do you like? All right.
This is average, not median.
No. I definitely get that.
Yeah, fair enough.
What is then an average monthly wage in Ireland then?
What is an average monthly wage in Ireland?
Yeah, because like minimum wage in Berlin is like the price of the rent in Ireland for that month.
Yeah, no, you couldn't live on Berlin wages at all in Ireland. What is the average wage in Ireland?
That was minimum wage that I said. Like.
Minimum wage. Minimum wage is €7 something per hour.
Oh, okay.
You'd be on, I think if you were on like a 9 to 5 working every weekday, I think it's something like 18,000 a year.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's like a take home of just over 1,000, which
So you're only paying rent.
only paying rent, yeah, basically.
Fucking
if you're in
insane.
Dublin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the housing crisis, and yeah, it's a really bad situation. Ireland, like Dublin, is more expensive than London.
Okay, but that's no reason to not vote for Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. They're nice. They're nice people. They deserve together maybe maybe not 70%, but 65%. Ciarán, you can't demand these radical ideas.
I know, right? Fucking hell. So yeah, so basically, housing was the number one issue of this election. I think the problem with Fine Gael,
Entitled millennials,
right? If we stop buying so many goddamn lattes,
how about you stop having a few, not so many spice bags and start working in a
the spice bag factory. Housing ended up being the number one topic of this election, which I think anyone who was on the ground could have predicted. Like I certainly predicted. Fine Gael's poor performance was probably down to the fact that they thought Brexit was going to be the number one issue, because that was why they were doing a high in the polls before, because they were being tough on the Brits kind of thing. But that just, when it came to an actual election, we were like, no, we have our own shit to take care of. So yeah, that's the situation.
Okay, so we have to get into Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
They got the most results.
Yes.
In the election. Why?
They
were just hot. They came out looking good.
Yeah.
Everyone woke up one morning and was like, 32 county republic.
Oh, gee, actually, yeah. Someone they ran in Galway West started a whole online debate with me about the viability of having candidates with a fade. On their hair.
With a what?
A fade. On his hair, because everyone was like, "Oh, this Sinn Féin candidate's a bit of a snack," and I'm like, "I think he just has a fade." That's all it is. But yeah,
I hate these hip hop Sinn Féin
Sinn Féin candidates.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, current Sinn Féin a little flashy. I don't know if they're the lunch pail Sinn Féin of yesteryear, but we'll let Ciarán tell us.
Yeah. So So why did they do so well? They did so well because I'd say two things. One, they're probably the next most viable party after Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. They've always been Ireland's third party. Well, that's not true. Sometimes there's been other parties, but more historically, yeah. The next thing, and I think the most important thing, and probably the thing that everyone on the international left could be the pop in the champagne, as you would say, is that they campaigned on the left. They courted a left-wing vote. They got a left-wing vote. It propelled them to power, effectively. They have right of initiative now to form a government. If they can't do it, then the president has to give it to the next biggest party to okay, you try. But,
or the sweet president?
The sweet president, yes.
Oh, what's his name again?
Michael D. Higgins. The D stands for dancing.
Can he just I don't know. I don't want to see him do anything bad. Don't.
Yeah, no, he won't. He's a darling.
Okay, thank goodness. You had me scared for a second.
From what I heard, housing was a big push in Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
Who is this Owen O'Brien figure?
Owen O'Brien.
O'Brien, excuse me. He's the housing minister. I mean, if they're not in government, he's not a minister. But director.
He's
for
their
Sinn
housing
Féin.
guy. So yeah, he's like a historical first. Like this is the first time anyone. He's like a household name now, and he's the first time anyone's housing person who's like not in government has become a household name. There's a pun in here somewhere. I'm not finding it.
It doesn't matter if he's a household name. No one has a house.
There
Hey,
you go.
yo, whoa.
You could print
But-
that.
He's like a technocrat, basically. He's like a big believer in social housing. He'll point to like social housing schemes that were done in like elsewhere in Europe, mainly the Nordic countries, and being like, look, massive housing schemes is fucking possible. He's your like one to watch within Sinn Féin now, because you basically have the two sides of Sinn Féin. You've got like Sinn Féin practicing what we preach Sinn Féin. We're actually left wing now. And he's in the media, that's called the O'Brien wing of the party, the Owen O'Brien wing of the party, versus Gerry Adams' Sinn Féin, which is just republicanism, whatever other policy is whatever. Like there's no other policy other than a united Ireland, which has just kind of devolved into get power at whatever means necessary. The current leader of Sinn Féin is definitely belonging to that wing, Mary Lou McDonald, but she has acknowledged and has run the campaign from a left wing perspective because she knew that was what was going to get her into power. But like she's so irrelevant in this that she's not the namesake for this new Sinn Féin.
So you were saying before we started recording that Sinn Féin pulled this. Now we're going to get into Sinn Féin. Are they good? That the last election, which was 2016, that Sinn Féin had a similar move, platform. Gerry Adams was still the leader. They campaigned on this left-wing stuff. Their result was like 12% or something like that.
They did all right.
Decent, but
yeah,
almost half of what they did this time. And then Gerry Adams was just like, I didn't believe any of that anyway.
Yeah, no. So this is where you get into like Sinn Féin's weird history and Sinn Féin's like the inherent contradictions in like Irish republicanism, which like the IRA was like this militant left-wing organization. I think people made comparisons to like Maoist. Like they would label them as Maoist. They worked in solidarity with the Intifada, the Black Panther Party, things like that. Like they were good, but at the same time, it was also wrapped up in traditional Catholicism, which during the Cold War was vehemently anti-communist, everything anti-communist, because it was a threat to religion.
But so you're talking about the provisional IRA. Were they really so like pro-Catholic? Because there was also the more traditional, like official IRA, right? That had also Marxist tendencies, but maybe more traditional Marxist rather than your Black Panthers.
So there's an issue there where like the IRA almost becomes its own separate thing. Like Sinn Féin and the IRA are heavily tied up together, but Sinn Féin was more often than not the people talking to the community. So it didn't matter if the PIRA, the RIRA, the CIRA, like didn't matter what their like actual good left-wing beliefs were if the actual local Sinn Féin candidate dictated the message. And I strongly recommend anyone who into reading it's a book by what's his name, Eamon McCann, I think, but it's called A War and an Irish Town, and that goes through basically, even in the first chapter, just all the contradictions within Irish republicanism, namely in the north. Very anti-union at times, very anti-strike, very traditional in its Catholic beliefs, would celebrate any figure that came from like the Republic of Ireland because they were in power and came from the Republic of Ireland, including Eamon de Valera, who is like basically the guy who did all of the like Catholic fuckery on a governmental level in Ireland. That's why we had like such stringent divorce laws, abortion laws. Like when the Pope came to visit, he kissed his ring, like and knelt down.
What are you gonna do? It's like Vicente Fox, the president of Mexico. Like he got in trouble for that when the Pope visited, and he kissed the ring or something. Yeah. And he was like, "He's the Pope. He's the fucking Pope. What am I supposed to do? Like, come on."
Yeah. So, that's always been this inherent contradiction. This is why, even Labour as a party in Ireland exists. Like, that's the party of historically Joseph Connolly, like Ireland's big boy, swinging dick Marxist. And as many people will point out, he's rolling in his grave based on what Labour does nowadays. But like they still have all the unions basically in Ireland.
Right. And is there, so my understanding, doing a little research, listening to a friend of the show, David Swanson, that maybe the official IRA line, if it's more Marxist, that's also more worker focused and not as, whether you're Protestant or Catholic, you're still a worker.
Yeah.
Right. And whereas maybe the more famous IRA, the provisional IRA now, would be, maybe more tied to Catholic, I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah, so
direct action.
This is the whole thing of like Ireland's supposed sectarian war of like, it's about Catholic or Protestant, when in reality it really wasn't. Those were just shorthands for saying Protestant was shorthand for you are of a Scots British settler descent, and Catholic is shorthand for you are of ethnic Irish descent. Someone who was Catholic but had the last name like Parnell or Stewart would probably get on fine in Northern Ireland compared to someone who was Protestant but had the last name O'Connell. Like, yeah, this was the nature of these religions playing a part in it is overestimated, and any kind of movement that tends to focus on that kind of just eventually becomes somewhat ethno-nationalist. Sinn Féin, for that reason of like, we are a nationalist party, but we are a left-wing nationalist party, which is historically true, is still confusing to a lot of the people who get like swept up in the net. This election like whole cycle actually began with a Sinn Féin councillor who was basically reprimanded for the party for saying on what is basically his Irish Joe Rogan podcast that he didn't trust Leo Varadkar because he wasn't a family man, dog whistle goes off, and because he wasn't actually Irish, because Leo Varadkar is of Indian descent, which is complete bullshit. He was born in Drogheda. He's terrible for other reasons. Like, don't get me wrong, but like, this is the kind of like low level stuff that Sinn Féin is attracting without much. You can either say incompetence, stupidity, or malice. At this point, I would put it on incompetence and stupidity.
Yeah. So then, what have they been doing for the past 30 years? And so, what positioned them to get the result that they did?
For the last 30 years, like, God, when was 30 years ago? Hey, I'm almost 30. 1990.
All right, you can say 20 then. I mean,
Yeah.
20, 25.
So, yeah. So, it's like, what have they been doing since, let's say, the Good Friday Agreement? The Good Friday Agreement is like the watershed moment because, and even for a bit after that, they were kind of a pariah in Irish politics because Ireland wanted to like move away from the terrorism and blah, blah, blah. And it was falling, and Ireland as a whole was falling into the narrative of the IRA was bad. I think now, especially a younger generation, doesn't really buy that or just finds it completely irrelevant. Actually, a hilarious thing that's been happening in Ireland with this election is watching like all the liberal smears, like attempted mudslinging and being like, you can't vote for Sinn Féin, that's the party of terrorists. And it's just like liberal establishment like grabbing at tools to try and like see what works. And of course it doesn't work because no one under the age of, like, you have 18-year-olds now born in like after the year 2000. None of them give a fuck. Like, I barely give a fuck. Like, the Good Friday Agreement was 1997. I was 7 years old when that happened. Yeah, so like, no one gives a shit about their association with the IRA. They care about what's in their manifesto.
Before we move on to the other left-wing parties, just for our listeners around the world, they love, they are inspired by the struggle of the IRA and leftists in Ireland. What should they think about Sinn Féin?
Modern Sinn Féin, let's say that, because there's like so many historical versions of Sinn Féin. Modern Sinn Féin, I would say it's like, I guess the term would be like critical support is probably the way you want to put it. Like, you can be excited for this. There's plenty of reasons to be excited about this election, namely due to the defeat of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. However, I do not trust Sinn Féin as far as I can throw them, which is to say, now that there's more of them, it's harder to throw them, so that becomes a thing. Like, that's basically, not to skip ahead too much, but there was a left-wing party that was basically, their whole motivation. The whole thing this election was basically to get every nominally left-wing party to say they won't work with Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. And Sinn Féin kept skirting that question. And there was like 1.5 days of Sinn Féin talking to other left-wing parties before they're like, we want to talk to Fianna Fáil now.
Yeah, we're recording this Saturday night. Maybe something will change by the time it's released or you hear it, but it seems like Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil is the closest. That pairing is, if this were Love Island or something, that pairing is heating up. And
that would be, like, Fianna Fáil have said they don't want to do it. We can talk about that later, but like if you were an actually left-wing party, if you had any decent historical sense, like of modern Irish electoral history, if you were a party that was actually advocating for change, you wouldn't touch these two parties with a 10-foot pole. Basically, you would like Sinn Féin has so much to gain by just continuing to be in opposition. Like they can get it together with all the other left-wing parties. They can make like Ireland's first actual shadow cabinet, like they do in the UK, of being like, oh, the government released their position on housing. Here's ours. Look how much sexier it is, basically, and then go into the next election and fucking get an actual majority this time. But I think everything so far has indicated that they're going for power. A couple of other things that I would say about like comparing this to other international, I think other things that like, namely English-speaking left-wing international has been excited about would be like Bernie and Corbyn. Bernie and Corbyn, like one thing you can say about both of them is they were kind of both on the outskirts of politics. They have been consistently on the right side of history, and their opinions haven't changed basically since they started in politics. They've held the same opinions since then. Maybe they adopted some new stuff, but like they said something X years ago about gay people. That's now the consensus. Like gay people are good, when everyone was saying they weren't. Sinn Féin doesn't have that. Mary Lou McDonald, the current leader, is not that. She used to be in Fianna Fáil.
All right.
Yeah. Sinn Féin as a party structure is also incredibly authoritarian. There's like no internal party democracy. So there's no chance of anything like momentum happening. If anything, like even the youth wing, like Ógra Sinn Féin, which is Sinn Féin's youth wing, Ógra Sinn Féin, I should say, is their like public message is aggressively more left wing, but like they have no method to actually challenge the leadership and drive them to the left. There's basically no evidence, as far as I can see, that disproves the statement Sinn Féin pivoted to the left for the purposes of getting power. There's basically nothing. They have no... they've associated themselves with activists, namely around Repeal the Eighth and stuff like that, but if you talk to those activists themselves, they'll say, like, we're more fluid. We supported Sinn Féin because they seem like the best option this election. They have no, like, ground base. They have no union association, even though unions are very weak in Ireland. There's nothing there that represents anything even close to what you would call, like, a left-wing Marxist mass party.
So, one last question before we get into the smaller left parties. Mm-hmm. Then why did they win? Does Irish nationalism carry some... Is it just because they're third on the list and the first two suck? Is it because the project of Irish nationalism carries something plus, like it's an extra throw? That combined with the left-wing politics is enough for people and that's why they're number one? Is it because people, I don't know. What gives them the bump?
So one other side of this is that, like, the other two kind of like sucked really hard this election. Like they fucking tripped over their own dicks. Because like this result for Sinn Féin, like it's a massive growth, but it's also like there has been times when parties have gotten this many seats, but Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael was just miles ahead, so it didn't matter. But I would say it's because they campaigned on the left. People believed in their manifesto. They were actually quite quiet about the republicanism stuff. I think Mary Lou McDonald herself said her red line for a coalition was not a united Ireland, which basically any Sinn Féin party leader would have said in the past, or one of them. She said it was the rent freeze. She said that was her red line. That's the only thing she wants to pass, basically. And I think that's their strategy at the moment is like get into government with one of the monster parties, pass the rent freeze, hope that endears them to people. Assuming nothing goes wrong and that process, which it inevitably will.
All right. What could go wrong?
Yeah,
Let's
right.
see what happens. Okay. Let's go through. What are your favorite left-wing parties? Oh, I don't know. We go favorite to least favorite, funniest to least funniest. I don't know if there's any Sinn Féin anecdotes we wanted to share. I don't think so.
Not really. They probably murdered some people. It's
Yeah.
fine. It is literally Hank Scorpio from The Simpsons. It's just like a really nice terrorist.
If you want, okay, Ciarán said very authoritarian party. If you want to push Sinn Féin left, you need to start your own IRA. I know there's a lot of them. The username you want is probably taken.
Yes.
So IRA 6726. That one's available. I just checked. Make that. Do like say some communist shit. And, then you'll be like, oh, Sinn Féin, you got to come with us.
blow up a pub.
With IRA.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. Okay, so the other...
Blow up international company redacted.
let's just call them Californian tech company named after a fruit. So other parties in Ireland, I think we can open this up a bit. Let's go through some of the hilarious parties. One that I showed to Nick during this time was the Irish Freedom Party, or IFP.
I absolutely, like, this man's energy is so cool.
Okay, I thought we were going to do the left, but we can do the alt-right.
No. I want this guy first because I really just... The video is so good because he's just on the side of a road in front of a Sinn Féin
Like office, yeah.
and a poster.
Yeah.
Whoever the representative for his area is.
The video, like the miking situation and the video is the exact same production value as when my brother and I made a movie when we were 9.
I mean,
we just had a handheld camera and we would just yell from across the room.
It is very angrily talk, like the genre of YouTube of angry man talk to the camera in his own car.
Yeah.
But like you then realize the car actually serves a very good audio function for just like using the camera's mic.
Yeah, exactly. And this is just the thing I liked first is that he went there, put his own poster above the Sinn Féin poster.
Yeah.
And what's this guy's name again?
The guy we were talking about, Peter Casey.
Peter Casey.
Yeah. Or Patter Casey. Patter's is the Irish for Peter.
Okay. Yeah, well he just kept saying about the Sinn Féin
Peter Casey.
Yeah, fella that his poster is above his because he's more man than him.
He's 10 times the man.
10 times the man that he is.
Yeah.
And that he doesn't understand what it was cool just seeing this like really shitty quality video on the side of a
I
road.
loved his campaign poster because it just had like him with his border collie dog in the photo as well.
Yeah, it's how many votes did he get?
He got over 1,000.
He deserved every one of those.
In like one of the least most populated areas in Ireland, Donegal.
And like I loved the just like because there is a real real like red state American vibe with that too, of like the dude who's in the car who's like, no, you know, listen here, you fucking little buttercup. This is why Trump is good. It's the exact same vibe with that if it was just Irish. Like there was the things that he was talking about, like, oh, you don't know what Irish nationalism is. It was like the starting point for then Ireland is going to be controlled by Sharia law.
You are a Muslimic style terrorist.
Yeah, and it was like yeah, I don't know exactly what he is necessarily talking about, nor do I really care to further find out more of his opinions about it.
Slightly unrelated. Pretty sure I went to high school with a guy named Peter Casey.
This is him now. Where is he now? He's in Ireland.
Fake Ulster accent. So I think that's leads in nicely to what I want to talk about, which is Ireland finally and concerningly has its alt-right now.
That's also what Julius Nyro said. Ireland, just like the U.S., will get it alt-right. I mean, it makes sense in the sense that, the right wing in this new alt-right, whatever you want to call it, in the U.S. and in a lot of parts of Europe is a response to economic crises and the failure of the establishment parties. And it's almost surprising that in Ireland, where there's a very intense failure of establishment parties and an intense economic crisis, that there's not more of a alt-right.
Yeah, I'm genuinely surprised that there is an Irish Golden Dawn yet.
Good on you.
Yeah. I managed to avoid it. I think it's this weird cocktail, because when we had And we had
They're called Irish car bombs.
yes, that's right, yeah. Classic Irish cocktail. But we was talking about in the episode we did with Radical Reflections on like the Irish colonial mindset as kind of like being something that constantly undercuts like your self-worth as like a person, as a nation, as a people. That plays a powerful role in backing away the fascism, because it's very hard to like undercut yourself and also think you're like the best thing ever.
There also wasn't an electoral system made out of like an Operation Gladio system, because like the reason why Greece and Italy have such just bonkers fucking systems is because Italy's is Operation Gladio and Greece is just like the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is just like the fascists, like how many ways can we like, you know, contort a swastika into, you know.
The Greek system is like if you were like bullying your younger brother and being like, oh no, actually I get 50 more points. Like just to like troll him.
If you want it, you want it, which is the funniest part about that one. But I mean, yeah, like in the sense like the US in those two cases just like kept trying to prop up just some weird, you know, leftover fascist movements where Ireland didn't have that. Nope. You know, like the British didn't come and they're all like, oh yeah, the blue shirts, like we're gonna make this into a party, and they're gonna control you, and you can't really vote them out no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, thankfully Ireland got its independence before that really became like a thing.
Before Operation Gladio.
Before Operation Gladio, yeah, basically. Our voting system is complicated but beautiful and works perfectly, and everyone should use it. Anyway, the person he was doing this video in front of actually just got the most votes in that county.
Look who's, you know, wait, how many more times over did he win?
He got 21,000
Damn,
votes.
he's 21,000. He's 21 times the man that he is.
Yeah. he got almost double the amount of votes needed to actually get the seat.
King.
Yeah, absolute king. But anyway, yeah, so we've now got the Irish Freedom Party, which came out from a Brexit, which was barely a thing, but they're loud and annoying on Twitter. We have the National Party, which wants to set up like a Catholic theocracy. The leader of that party made a name for himself by being basically the only party leader who opposed to like the repeal of the 8th referendum. Yeah, and we have Aintu, which is like a guy who used to be with Sinn Féin, but really, really hates abortion. So he's now. I think that's also
again another dude who just makes videos in his car.
Pretty much. I think that also illustrates the weird position Sinn Féin is in, where you can have like someone in Sinn Féin be very successful in his local constituency, be with Sinn Féin for basically life, but then like leave them over one issue and then becomes Ireland's most viable right-wing party.
Sounds like Austria.
Yeah, right. So that exists now, which is weird and shit, and they're very loud online. They're much louder than any kind of like left-wing Irish Twitter, which is disturbing. But other actual viable parties, let's talk about them. The Greens also did well this election. They're terrible. They're god-awful. Their most radical position at the moment is like a carbon tax. That's their solution.
They have strong Guy Verhofstadt vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, even worse, and I mean, slightly better in the sense that I think they identify the problem more directly, but then they're like, I don't know, we're going to do something about it. What if we had an app for the environment?
Pretty much.
Yo, I'm going to hack the environment. Just you fucking watch.
We will talk about this when we go through basically all the green parties of Europe, but they are like the 100% distilled ultimate example of every green party, which is gets electoral success off the back of a bunch of movements that they weren't actually involved in. Then, as soon as they get an ounce of power, do everything to undercut those movements from being successful.
Damn, is this foreshadowing?
Yeah, pretty much.
For when's Germany's next election? Fuck.
2021. Pretty soon. Next year.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
The momentum that the Greens have is not like budged yet.
No.
In Germany, it's so fucking weird, and like obviously that would happen immediately. Like, first the Greens just go into a coalition with the CDU, like, which just be fucking goofy as all hell, and it has existed before. Like, don't get me wrong, but
Green growth, though. I think the example I want to give of the Irish Green Party is last time they were in government, they were with Fianna Fáil. They rode a wave of protests to a huge showing of seats, namely around a campaign called Shell to Sea, which was to get rid of gas company Shell out of Irish waters. And as soon as they got into coalition with Fianna Fáil after that election, they stopped an investigation into like government funding of Shell company. So yeah, they're terrible. They had one cool candidate called Saoirse McHugh who was talking about setting up various Irish communes and guillotining the rich. She didn't get elected, unfortunately, and if they go into government with one of the two monster parties, she's probably gone out of their party. Then we have Labour, who's basically Blairite and never stopped being Blairite.
Well, they were the Greens. That was the 2016 election, or they went
No,
into...
Greens was before that. They were also blamed for the financial crisis.
Okay, but then Labour did... Then it was Labour's turn in 2011 to do the same exact thing. Like, it's like the line in Arrested Development where they're talking about open relationship. But it could work for us.
No, they were actually... In that sentence, they were actually talking about mortgages.
No, wasn't it?
It was the inflated mortgage because it was before 2008.
Yeah.
Buying the giant mansion house.
Okay.
Yeah. These things almost
Fix
never
that.
work, but for us...
But they also were like, that was also part of the thing about how they're going to
it's
save
a
the
recurring
relationship.
joke. Yeah. Anyway, the next... most of our like decent independent TDs, like MPs, come from... Labour went into government with Fine Gael and all of them just pieced out and were like, no, fuck this. So we actually have a lot of very good independent
Are these
TDs.
the ones who gave just like the like in European Parliament? I mean, they're in
Yes.
European Parliament, obviously, but they gave just
One called Guido Gobshite.
yeah. Then he got reprimanded. It was really fucking funny.
Go out on top.
What was he? There was another one too that then called out the Iowa caucus, didn't they?
Yep.
Yeah, like you got some real kings over there, kings and queens.
Yeah.
Because I think the one who called out it was a woman who called out the Iowa caucus thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Hello, Irish Parliament. My name is Rob. I am a 6-year-old boy from Massachusetts. please save me. Please develop an app to stop the...
I have so many potholes from mortar fire.
I did look it up because I felt bad. I'm like, oh, are some people offended by Irish car bomb? It was invented in a Connecticut bar.
Yes.
You're welcome. That's New England excellence,
The
baby.
least Irish New England state.
Yeah, actually. Was invented by some fancy lads at their Connecticut estates, you know, when they weekend after spending all the long week in Manhattan.
Yeah.
They're like, this looks like an Irish car bomb.
Made by traditional Irish American
Rory Gilmore.
Jonathan Worcestershire. Yeah, then who else do we have who is nominally left? We have...
Do you mention Solidarity PVP?
No, yeah, I'm going to leave them last because they're good. The next one that did quite well is Social Democrats. They kind of were a split from Labour, of being like Labour is no longer in any way left wing. Social Democrats are pretty good, if not just like really uncharismatic and woefully technocratic. They have like probably the best costed plan for making a national health service for Ireland and things like that. But they've done well, and it now falls to them to see if they're going to like prop up any shitty powers that be rather than make a left-wing coalition. And then last we get the Good Boys, which is this smattering of various different parties, but they usually go under the name Solidarity - People Before Profit. They are all genuinely Marxist. They are at worst Trotskyists. But like their manifesto is genuinely left-wing. One policy difference between them and Sinn Féin, particularly in terms of housing, was Sinn Féin wants to make a bunch of social housing less than them. I think their figure was like 30,000. Sinn Féin's is 10,000. Sinn Féin wants to do like means... Sorry. Sinn Féin wants to do like means-tested...
Yo, fuck that.
Yeah, social housing, whereas People Before Profit Solidarity want to do social housing open to anyone who applies, basically. We'll give a priority to people who desperately need it, but like, yeah.
Is it weird that whenever the topic of social housing comes, I know that then everyone always, because this kind of came up this week of all the weird like American anti-imps and Maoists and whatnot, when Bernie was like listing off countries that have universal health care. A lot of those countries like don't have it, but whatever. Then they're all like, you didn't mention any, socialist countries, which, to be very fair, like they are like right about that. Why does I never understand why like no one has ever mentioned like just the Soviet model on housing. Like everyone gets a house.
Yeah.
It's not like that wasn't the thing that strained the Soviet economy. Like I always find it really funny because it's like it just seems like an utterance from like left wing parties that like, okay, yeah, obviously anti-communism is like deeply in that, but you can like actually look at social projects in relatively recent history of countries far poorer than most other European countries. Like it like, yeah, they may not have been the best houses, but every single fucking person in these countries had a house, and your rent was like required to stay incredibly low in these countries. Like even like the thing that then's always talked about people in the GDR is one of those things. Like I had education, I had housing. Like yeah, there were shit things like like the Stasi existed or whatever. Which depending on who you talk to, that's not even like a talking point. Because I think that Western history brings that out far too much because. It's not like the West had, the CIA and shit like that, just like, mobbing around the entire world. But yeah, like I'm always just so amazed by that because like you mentioned earlier in the episode about like the Nordic thing. And I know that like people before profit, there are like actual like
yes.
tankies in their fucking party
yes.
and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of people who, at least not interactions that I've had with them, but that I've seen on Twitter and whatnot, like they're very much like a lot of like Soviet stands and shit like that, which is actually cool. Like, and especially with the colonial history of Ireland, it would make sense that there's a pretty like vocal group of people then who are like that.
I think they've learned in terms of media to routinely bring up Cuba.
Yeah.
Cuba has basically no stigma within Irish society historically, unlike the United States.
Yeah, you could look at that as unique, or just that Ireland has a normal, normal view on the world. That they support Palestine, that they they support Cuba. It's like
but like any other Western. I mean, okay, Ireland's also not part of NATO either, too, which maybe has a part to do with it as well. But any other Western European country, like you can really not make that comparison. Like even in like the fucking like Scandinavian Nordic countries, like they're not gonna like you're not gonna go in there and be like, well, Cuba has a good system in this and that, because they're just gonna be like, oh, Oz is the best, blah 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 blah. And
they've got like a superiority complex.
Yeah. They're also incredibly wealthier than Cuba is too.
Yes. So I think people before profit, they don't have a leader, but the one who's kind of like viewed as the de facto leader is Richard Boyd Barrett, who's from my constituency. And last time I voted, I gave a vote to him, so that was nice. He actually, if anyone wants to watch it, although it's very long and very tedious, we did have like an actual 7-way leader debate in the middle of the election where like every kind of viable party was got a leader in and talked their shit. He was the only one who got like applause, like for any of the things he said. And like he routinely kind of held good positions compared to everyone else. There was some key moments that kind of like distinguished him from other left-wing parties, namely on like they have a very strong rehabilitation first kind of answer to drugs, which the other nominally left-wing parties don't. Sinn Féin got a lot of policies that end up being very pro-cop, which solidarity people before profit are not. I managed to like corner that.
Do I have to think? Do I have to sing the song again?
Do it.
We love our cops, our law enforcement. Okay, I'm done.
So like that was probably a good example of seeing like distinguishing things there. He talked about the fact that like social housing should be for everyone because it removes the stigma of social housing.
You should just have a house an apartment given to you. That is this. I don't know why that's so fucking difficult.
We have free water coming out of the taps, so we need free houses coming out of the taps.
Not for long with those water charges.
Yeah. So that was actually something that was. I can loop this back down. The water charges protest was like this big watershed moment. In like Irish politics, especially post 2008. And this is where a lot of the solidarity people before profit got their like cred from, because they were out there every day on the with the what was actually a very grassroots anti-water charges movement. So this is where people like Paul Murphy and Richard Boyd Barrett and Breed Smith all come from.
So why didn't they win then? And that's a general question of what's the future of Irish electoral politics and Irish leftism, because sounds great. Sounds like there's a lot of conditions on the ground to politicize, radicalize, whatever you want to say for people. It seems like you have at least a few shifting good parties.
Mm-hmm.
Solidarity, PPP sounds pretty good to me.
Yep.
What are we missing?
Yeah, so I think the critique thrown against Solidarity People Before Profit, which they don't help a lot with, is that they kind of, as a party, seem unorganized, which to a certain extent is not true, and to a certain extent it is. It's they're unorganized to an extent that people can point at and make things. For example, when Sinn Féin was holding talks with left-wing parties, they only met with the People Before Profit wing of the party. The other various parties that make it up weren't invited, and they're like, well, what the fuck?
Cloud shit.
Yeah. But it would be nice if they kind of united a bit more, made a movement, made the Confederation a bit more the Confederation exists to anyone who's a member, but we can keep it out of the public eye. But then again, they're about as organized as any other party. It's just other parties have better branding. Their vote was pretty good. They were actually worried about some of the stuff. Basically, no big protests happened between now and the last election that they could take clout for. The water charges one was the election before. So that was a problem for them. But they're also the ultimate proof that this was a left-wing vote. For the first time in Sinn Féin's electoral history, the second preference, because we have ranked voting in Ireland, of Sinn Féin votes overwhelmingly went to Solidarity People Before Profit. The other side of it is Solidarity People Before Profit don't have the money to run candidates everywhere. I think they got 5 seats out of... I think they only ran 11 candidates. So... No, even probably less than that, actually. Sorry. So, they just don't have the money or manpower yet to move, do a mass movement. They also benefit from the fact that, Sinn Féin also didn't run a lot of candidates. Sinn Féin got 37 people in there, and they only ran 40, which is not, even if they got all 40 in, that wouldn't be enough to get a majority. So, yeah, if Sinn Féin next election run more people, they could actually accidentally crush the other left-wing parties, which sucks. That does suck. So, the future of the left in Ireland. What do we do? What do? We have to see now what coalition gets formed. To give a little bit of news, Sinn Féin did talk with left-wing parties, namely the Social Democrats and People Before Profit. They didn't talk to... I don't think they've talked to the Greens or Labour. Labour is a bit of a joke at this point. They are now most recently talked to Fianna Fáil. Within Fianna Fáil is actually the Fianna Fáil membership. A lot of the parliamentary party do not want to work with Sinn Féin at all. They're and they want an anti-Sinn Féin thing with Fine Gael and possibly rope in the Greens as well for a majority.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be on brand? That
would be very on brand for the Greens.
I mean, looking into the future, I have this crystal ball in front of me, and I've seen things.
Yeah. This crystal ball is glowing green for some reason.
Yeah, and black.
Oh no, that's good. But I think Fine Gael wants to step away from this because they were in government before and it ruined them, so they want to step back. But if I were to put my money on it, I would say we're probably going to get some sort of monstrous coalition like that. I would hope so anyway, because I think you could do a really good job of Sinn Féin working with the other nominally left-wing parties in opposition to make themselves and the other parties super sexy to the general electorate.
Houses for everyone is sexy.
Yes. Sorry, what?
What?
What did you say?
I said housing for everyone is sexy.
Housing for everyone is sexy.
It's like the hot girls for Bernie if you like Bernie. Or
housing for Bernie.
And you need to have a room. You need to have like a house with a messy room in it to take your photos. Everyone knows that.
Hot girls for housing. How will I get my Instagram influencer career off the start if I don't have an apartment?
Yeah. I cannot start my fans only without one.
Yeah. I hate doing it outside. I can't control the lighting. Ireland is always overcast. So like
do it. You know what? Do it for the e-girls.
Yes.
The e-girls of Ireland.
Twitch streamers cannot keep Twitch streaming from the local public library.
How can I TikTok just in a park?
Right. Oh God.
Actually, you can TikTok very well in a park.
So I would hope that you're basically looking at three options. Sinn Féin works with Fianna Fáil, and then the election after that, Sinn Féin probably gets destroyed. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael work together in some capacity. Next election, hopefully, they both get destroyed. And at least the myth that they are not the same party is finally destroyed. That would also be nice. Although that means in the immediate short term, it's going to be horrible. There's going to be a lot of more asset stripping of Ireland and such. We don't really own the rights to fish in any of our own waters. We kind of like sold that to other countries.
Oh,
yeah, that was fun.
You guys do have a lot in common with Palestine.
Yeah, the Japanese. Japanese fishing off the coast of Gaza. And then, I would hope if that happened, then we can make a decent left-wing opposition that would be in opposition and could actually have a shadow cabinet and be like, we would do this and we would do that. And then next election, everyone's built enough momentum to fucking destroy Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael.
Yeah.
The other option is another election is called because no one can form a government.
Ooh, yeah, that's fun.
If another election was called...
Oh, just to go back. So this was Leo Varadkar did the Theresa May shit. Like, he's the one who called this election in January, right?
Yeah.
But why? Why did he do that? Just because he wanted to flex? Or was there a reason?
Kind of wanting to flex. People were perplexed by it.
They were perplexed at his flex?
If you are a conservative politician who acts like a robot, according to people, don't do it. I know it's very tempting. You're like, I could call an election. Look at those numbers. Don't do it. It's not going to... I mean, please do it. For our sake.
The polling didn't look good either for him. It looked like Fianna Fáil was going to take over.
Leo was like, I'm going to shoot my shot.
Yeah.
He saw the gif of Steph Curry pulling up from the moon. He's like, that's me.
People were perplexed as to why this election was called. There was basically no reason for it.
Leo Varadkar watched Uncut Gems and he's like, do you want to win by 1 or do you want to win by 30? And he's like, I want to win by 30.
Yeah. And
Leo Varadkar walks into the fucking polling station just like right before he's going to lose. I'm going to come!
Yeah. So, future of the left in Ireland, fucking... My guess is if you're in Ireland, you're looking to organise now, I would say work with Solidarity, People Before Profit. I particularly like Paul Murphy's project, which is called RISE, which I believe stands for Radical Insurrectionary Socialist Environmentalist. So that is under the People Before Profit umbrella. Their main kind of viewpoint is that the vote for Sinn Féin is going to be left-wing, and we as actually good left-wing parties need to reckon with that. I think this election proved his thesis correctly. But now you get into the issue of... The other thing that I'd suggest, if you can figure out a way to do it and you're in Ireland, build some sort of movement within Sinn Féin that will hold them to the fire and actually make them follow through with everything they put in the manifesto.
Pick a 3-letter acronym.
Yep.
Wear balaclavas.
Unfortunately, real IRA is taken.
Yeah.
Which is a baller move.
Fucking real Donald Trump ass name.
Real Sinn Féin. But yeah, so that's... Because I would trust Sinn Féin a lot more if they had something like momentum, like the UK Labour's momentum, like holding to the fire, putting in like...
I thought you were going to say you trust them if they had a gun to their head.
If they had a gun to their head, yeah, fuck it. That was something of people suggesting. That was like a mom joke that I got, or a dad joke that I got when the election results were coming in. I was just like, imagine if it's a Sinn Féin Labour coalition, then it's called Guns N' Roses. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty good. That deserves a slight giggle.
This is how Ciarán's going to be able to move back to Ireland and afford his, apartment in Dublin. He's gonna go on tour making his Irish dad jokes.
So either agitate to make Sinn Féin left, or agitate for the actually left-wing party to be there in such a way that Sinn Féin is forced to work with them. Because I think they have to. I mean, like, they didn't do well this election, but everyone who got through, everyone who got a seat is definitely got more clout, is definitely more famous in nationwide media than like any of the weird people Sinn Féin can drag up to like make up their extra seats if they were to run again. So I think they should work with people before profit, but apparently I would like them to do that is not good enough reason for Sinn Féin
What
to
about
do
if
that.
I would like them to do that? I think that
I'll
I got some clout in Ireland.
All I want to add to that is I think what people see, I don't know what different people see in it, but what I see in it is something that's probably it's happening in a lot of places we talk about on the show. There is whatever the old form of politics that just utter shit is just dying.
Murder it.
It just sucks. I mean, I'm remembering. I don't know if we ever talked about it on the show, that one video from, I think she was a Fine Gael politician in the European elections. Do you remember her name? We will put it in the show notes.
The 90s kid.
The 90s kid.
She was just
one,
like,
yeah.
I'm a 90s kid. Remember the 90s? Spice Girls, Tamagotchi. It was just, and like, vote for us. And like, that was it.
Yeah.
That was like, but that, everything you're saying about like the way politics works in Ireland, it's terrible, but it's on the same spectrum as other places. It's just more intense. Like the two main parties are just more intensely talking about nothing and not differentiating themselves from each other in any way.
Yeah.
And that fucking I don't know. Just the 90s shit blows my mind. Like the stuff they can get away
The
with.
90s were cool.
It's like, all right, we're still gonna have all this shitty stuff, but you remember Homestar Runner? We're gonna make a site where we just say the shitty stuff in his funny voice.
Yeah.
Yo, Rob.
Austerity, housing crisis. Wouldn't you love that?
Yo, you remember that episode of Rugrats where like Tommy gets out his like they go on an adventure, and at the end of the adventure Tommy's just like, oh, vote Finnegan.
Vote again. Yeah. Oh god.
We're gonna reboot VH1's I Love the 90s. That's all we got.
I love Finnegan.
But it's like, it reminds me of that scene in The Matrix where Cypher, the Teddy guy from Memento with the goatee, he's like selling them out and he's eating the steak, right? And he's like, I know this steak doesn't actually taste like anything. And in The Matrix, it's just designed to like, pleasure my taste buds or whatever. And he's like, well, ignorance is bliss. And he eats it.
Yeah.
But like, we don't live in the Matrix. There's no whatever drug or morphine or whatever good enough to distract you from the fucking shit. And like, they've been selling you these dog shit drugs. Like, they're like, dude, you're gonna forget about everything once you hit this Fine Gael. Like, woo, you're not gonna care. And they're fucking lying to you. It's not good. Like, even if you work in tech and you think
Pull
like,
some Fine my cup.
if you're a tech worker in Dublin and you're like making like decent money and you're like, well, Elon Musk is gonna take me with him like to his Mars colony, I'll be fine. Like, he's probably not gonna do it, bro. Yeah. Like, even your like top.
He can't pronounce your name. Too many accent
Even
marks.
your top shelf morphine isn't good enough. Like, it's not. Like, you can't even use a morphine like analogy. It's like the 1800s, and you were like shot on the battlefield, and all you have is like a shot of whiskey and like a towel that probably has measles to like bite down on while they saw off your leg, and your leg is just gonna be sold to someone that we talk about in Mega Rica who's gonna eat it like a comically large turkey leg. There's nothing to disabuse you from the real conditions as they are. Yeah. And that,
this Fine Gael got me crazy.
The hangover, like, it's going to suck, but
that's why you just keep doing it.
Nothing's going to get you back to that. No hit's going to, you can't, one more hit. No. It's not going to work.
You might think it might be funny to vote for someone like, I don't know, Colin O'Keefe and his loyalist, papist, communist Ireland idea. It was insane. I loved
That's
it.
like when you're drunk and high at the same time.
What if Ireland was a republic and a monarchy?
And yeah, it's funny. But more and more I feel like real politics is happening. And whether it happens, whether it's that tactically takes place in the electoral realm or somewhere else, man, at least you're not lying to yourself anymore.
Yeah, I think that this like just exactly on that note, just really kind of, I mean, I think collectively on this show we've always had kind of just the suspicion about just pure electoralism. Like there is more politics, obviously, that things behind that. You know, I think, just like the critical support is pretty much how we have to go into every election that pretty much comes up in most Western countries of the next probably 5 years. There is still, we saw, like, I don't know, it was after just the shit show that was the UK.
Yeah.
It was nice to see an election result that wasn't complete fucking horseshit.
Yes.
But even though in the sense that it's like, well, okay, yeah, like, I know a lot of people like are going to look at that, just as probably will be in the U.S. if, Trump is voted out of office, which can only be done if Sanders is done. But even exactly in that same thing, like, okay, let's say that the U.S. has like a, Sanders wins by a very small margin. Like, okay, luckily the U.S. doesn't have these insane. Actually, no, not luckily. Like the U.S. is a bizarre dictatorial state where like the two classes of capital fight each other. But there has to be then like that's never the end game, and I think that for everyone who listens to the show, like that kind of has to be the thing that's like driven into your head or our heads too, because I think we all forget it too, especially getting like being excited about elections, like nice little rush, it's fun, it gets me off.
Nice hit.
Yeah, nice little hit. But then like literally the next day though, you're sitting there being like, okay, like what now? Like where do we go? Like I want housing, I want healthcare, I want this, I want that. Oh, like maybe I do have to do something like okay, whatever country you live in, it obviously is then different, but there is like a sense of like a realm like of politics meeting on the electoral sense and like the radical change thing. Like you can exist in both realms. Like you don't have to be, well, oh no, I'm a Maoist, so I'm not going to vote. And I think that in Ireland that is kind of an example that you can't have that opinion. That if you are radical, like it should be an example to other radical leftists of like, at least from what I've seen, is that you're not gonna like given. I don't know what the turnout rates are in Ireland. It
was actually really low this election.
How low is really low though for Ireland?
63%.
Okay, that's like extremely high in the U.S. But like the sense of that, then that you can just like go on your merry way doing your revolutionary shit of posting on Twitter or whatever your revolutionary practice is. I think that like the left in some of these countries have it like a little bit better, knowing that then there's like there's two sides to the same coin of getting your shit done, and if that means then however many years of being in an opposition party. Yeah, it's gonna suck. Like it's gonna really fucking suck. But it's also in the sense of that even in the act of being in opposition can then be something that then's productive within itself. Of like we're gonna do ball and shit. Here's the plan of how. I mean, even look in the U.S. with the sense of and other European green movements of like Green New Deal and shit like that. There's a plan for tomorrow to then how to fucking do that, or for housing. There's a plan for tomorrow of how to do that, and like we can have an alternative. So let's fucking make it happen, fam.
If you want to hear more of our takes on electoralism, you got to listen to the Patreon episode next week. We're putting that America stuff. We're not inundating your normal feed with the America stuff. We got nice European content.
All America stuff from now on will be pretty much on the Patreon feed if you want to fucking hear our dumbass opinions about that.
We'll also do, I don't know, Taiwanese electoral politics. Yep. Fuck it, let's go.
I will do a Drake rap for every country. I thought of a German one. You guys want to hear it? All right.
Yeah, good taste.
Wait, I forgot how to do the Drake voice. Yeah. All my notes on confident. Yeah. Howling at the moon like I'm Jordan Belfort. I'm killing the rap game, kind tot ort.
God damn it. God damn it. Even I get it.
On that note,
Jesus Christ.
On that note, we will see you all next week.
Yeah.
Take care.
peace. Chokiarla. Did I say it right?
No.
Fuck it.
Chucky Arla.
On the same page, waiting for Dolly, thinking about things that I have to pay. The woman in the window harassing me. Why can't you get a job and be like me? You know I'm wishing that the window would break, cause I wanna smash in her fucking face. Always a struggle in this hole. The boys on the floor, cause the boys in the door. Oh, the boys